These Egyptian clothes, I just hope there's no wardrobe malfunctions. Hi. Hi. How are you guys? Hey, you. No, you in the pink. How you doing? Hey, you back there, do you take numbers? Yeah. There you go. Oh, he's doing it. Cool. Thank you. Well, hey, I'm glad I could be here tonight. I came from a long way ago. Hey, I heard somewhere recently that there was some movie called Exodus. Yeah, anybody see that? You saw it? Only one person saw it, really? How was it? Not bad? Okay. Did you read the book? No. Oh, okay. Well, that's interesting, because I know a fair amount about that book and that story. And so I want to share with you a little bit tonight. Here's kind of the question that I have. I kind of was thinking, you guys are younger people, and younger people have lots of things to think about. And I've thought a lot about things, so that'll make a win-win combination. But I just was curious, have you really kind of thought about what you want to be when you grow up? Yes. That's cool. And who you want to be, like what you want to do, all those kind of things? All right. Well, that's cool. Have you figured it out yet? Yeah, you have. Wow, that's impressive, because I didn't really know at your age. I started to, though, and I looked around and I realized that I kind of grew up in a weird situation, because I grew up with the rich folk in Egypt, but I really wasn't one of them. I was a Hebrew person. I should have been like a slave, but I didn't. I got to grow up in the big schools and in the big money, and I got a good education and all that kind of stuff. But I didn't really know what God was doing with me. And it was such a weird feeling growing up like that. You know, the thing I do know, though, is God has a plan for your life. And I know this, too. God can make good out of any situation. Any situation He can make good out of. Here's a little bit of my background. I was separated from my family at a very young age. In fact, I was still a baby, and I was in a basket, and I was put in a river. And I ended up going downstream, and I got picked up by the Egyptian folk. And I ended up being raised in the Egyptian palaces, although it was kind of weird because my mom kind of got back involved in that, and she was helped out. But here's the thing, too. I wasn't much of a perfect guy either. I had a bit of a temper. I got angry a lot. I mean, like real ticked off. I'd beat people up with a stick. In fact, one time, this is kind of crazy. I look back on it, I'm not real proud of it, but I killed a guy. Yeah, he ticked me off real bad. And so I killed him. You ever lose control of your anger at times? Yeah, I did too. Have anybody killed anybody? Oh, that's good. Don't do it. It's not much fun. It creates lots of pain in a lot of ways. But I can tell you this, it isn't always going to be easy. Life just sometimes is really difficult. And I kind of wanted to share with you a little bit about some of my life and some of the challenges and some of the things that I faced. As a young guy, and even as I got older, I couldn't speak very well. I kind of stuttered a lot, and I got real scared in front of people, especially like important people. They really intimidated me. I couldn't speak in front of big crowds and stuff. That just freaked me out. And I wrestled with whether I was good enough and if I could ever really do anything for God. You ever wrestle with that? You ever wonder if you're ever good enough and if God can really use you for anything? Yeah. Yeah, I sure did. And then I spent a long time wandering in the desert. After I killed the guy, I took off running because I figured it's probably not good to hang around with people that you killed. And so I spent a lot of time out in the desert, and I felt a lot of shame. I felt alone a lot of my life. I don't know about you, but I don't know how many of you have actually been a shepherd and hung out with sheep. They don't really talk a whole lot. You can beat them around and you can grab their little necks and yank them, or you can goad them in the rear. That hurt, yeah. They don't like it either. But it gets them moving. But they don't talk much. And it's pretty lonely. And since I was an Egyptian, it was kind of a weird deal because since I was an Egyptian, they all knew, though, that I was different. I wasn't one of them. I was like an outsider. But the funny thing is, my own people, the Hebrew people, they didn't like me either because I was living with the Egyptians and I had all the special privileges. So I was really kind of like a man stuck between two worlds. And it really was kind of lonely. I imagine you know what loneliness can feel like. It's not very much fun. Then it was kind of crazy because I was out in the wilderness and God told me one day that I was supposed to lead all these Hebrew people out of Egypt. But when I kind of confronted Pharaoh about this, he didn't take too kindly to it. He thought I was wacko. And he basically said no way and made my own people work harder. And so they hated me even all the more. And so maybe you're asking, well, where does God come into this? What's he have to do? Where's the good part of this come? Well, it's kind of interesting how God began to work then, more and more. And as life went on, I began to see a little bit more of how God had been working all along. But it took me a while to kind of figure out what God was up to. So when I was the leader, the Egyptian guys, the leader, they call him Pharaoh. If you haven't seen the movie, you got to go check out that movie. I hear it's pretty good. I haven't seen it myself, but since I lived it, I guess that's okay. But the book's pretty good too. You got to check out the book. But Pharaoh said he wouldn't let my people go, and so God said, you know what? We're not going to have that. They are going to go, and so God sent plagues, and he made the Nile River turn into blood, and he made gnats come and boils on people. And it was all these different plagues. You can read about it. You can even watch it maybe nowadays. But basically it was kind of this crazy deal where God kind of went after the Egyptian gods because they have all kinds of gods over there. And God began to attack them and prove his superiority. But then finally it came to that last plague, and it was the angel of death. Where the angel of death came over the firstborn and killed any of the firstborn sons in the land. And only the Hebrew people, if they put blood over their doorposts from a perfect lamb, would be spared. Kind of crazy stuff, really, when you think about it. They had to kill a perfect lamb and smear blood over the doorpost. And if they did that, then the angel of death would pass over. But if not, the firstborn son was killed. Dead. And that's how you have the Passover, is what that's called. And you see later on in the Bible or in the New Testament where Jesus even sat and celebrated at the Passover. But that's getting into stuff that I can't talk about right now. I will maybe later. But finally he said, Pharaoh gave in and he said, you can be free from slavery. But even then, as the Hebrew people left, Pharaoh got all mad and chased them and wanted to kill them. And eventually, they crossed the Red Sea, and it was kind of a crazy story, is that as he crossed the Red Sea, I put my stick in the water. You saw that, didn't you? Yeah, I put my staff in the water, and the water parted, and the Hebrews crossed on dry land, and they got over there, and then Pharaoh's army came rushing across the land, and God said, whoosh, and drowned them. Something like that. They all died. And it was kind of crazy because if Pharaoh had just obeyed, he could have saved his land, he could have saved his people, and really could have saved his own life. but he had to do it his way. He always had to live life his way. And after all the miracles that we saw God do, we finally made it out of Egypt. But the journey was really hard. We had a lot of traveling to do. And we got really hungry and angry. They got hangry. So I hear. And we had to walk a whole bunch. And I heard nothing but complaining and whining over and over again. And it got really old. Got really old. And again, I felt kind of lonely because I was the only one in charge, and really these people weren't helping me much. They're just whiners. You ever kind of feel alone, like no one's there for you? Like you're kind of doing this journey by yourself? I sure did. Yet God kept telling me this, that He would never leave me and He would never abandon me. Just trust. Man, that's hard. Just to trust God. I wasn't perfect. I wish I was. But even when I was talking to God, I was still human, and I spent time with God. And I had to understand more and more of how holy He is and how imperfect I am. And yet, at the same time, He wanted a relationship with me, and He said He'd never leave me. And you know, taking time to talk and listen to God was the very thing that gave me courage and gave me patience. And a love for these pain-in-the-rear people, too. It was just hard. And in the midst of the journey, God was still there, guiding us by a pillar of fire. It's pretty crazy, really. At nighttime, there's this big pillar of fire, and during the day, there's this big cloud that we followed, and God guided us. Then one day, this is kind of crazy. One day, God said, I want you to come up on this mountain. And I said, oh, I like mountains. Those are fun. But He said, I want you to come all the way to the top. This one mountain, it was called Mount Sinai. And He said, I want you to come up here and I want you to spend 40 days hanging out with me and not eating. And I had to check my hearing aid because I wasn't sure that was really God talking. 40 days without food, that's a long time. And someone told me that you guys just went 30 hours the other day without food. That's pretty cool. But God wanted me to go 40 days. And so I went up on this mountain and I spent 40 days hanging out with Him. And at the end of the 40 days, He gave me the law. He gave me the 10 Commandments on these stone tablets that He wrote. And basically they were the 10 Commandments to govern all the people. But even more importantly, to ultimately expose everyone's sinfulness and a need for a Savior. You know, I keep looking back on those 10 Commandments and go, man, I can't obey all those things. There's a few of them I can obey. Like, I don't murder people anymore. I did, though. And you go down the list. And ultimately, I think we look at just those 10 and we go, wow, I can't even obey all 10 of those. You see also then that there's a need for a Savior. You see in Exodus, that book, that in chapter 34, verse 14, He says, worship no other gods but me, for I am jealous about my relationship with you. Now that's kind of an interesting thing. I've kind of wrestled with at times. What does it mean that God can be jealous? Because I'm not supposed to be jealous. I know that. But God created everything. God owns everything. God is entitled to everything. See, that's the problem sometimes with us. We get jealous over things, and it's usually like one of them girl type things. Like some guy like some girl, and some girl then like some other guy, and some guy gets jealous because that girl, and it's this whole possession thing. The problem is you don't possess anybody. But the problem is God does. God owns it all. God made it all. God's entitled to all. He's the only one that has right to be jealous, not us. But let me ask you this. You think about those 10 commandments and you go, well, that's not too complex. But I'm kind of curious about this. Do you think God really knows what's best for you? Do you really think God knows what's best for you? Do you think that He really understands this life and that we will be better off if we just obey? I don't know about you, but I do. It took me a while to figure it out and to really trust Him. And honestly, I still battle with trusting Him. And I want to do it my way quite a bit, honestly. But I'm getting better. I'm getting better. I've learned that through my journey that God has a plan to use my own unique personality, my own unique gifts, my own unique life situations to do great things. And the cool thing is, I think He does for you too. I think He has some cool plans for you as well. Have you ever wondered why you're in the situation you're in now? Maybe you have divorced parents, or maybe you wonder how in the heck you ended up in Gardner, or why you're at Pioneer and not Trail Ridge, or whatever situation you may find yourself in. I always wondered that too. I always wondered, how in the world did I end up in a palace? How did I end up with the Egyptians where they didn't like me? How in the world did I not end up with the Hebrews and now they don't like me? Then I'm wandering out with a bunch of stupid sheep and they don't even talk to me. I always wondered what God was doing. Here's one thing I know. That God has you there for a reason. And He has you around the people that you're around for a reason. I had an old mentor of mine tell me once that God loves those people around you so much that He gave them you. So I challenge you to think through that a little bit. What are you doing with your life? Even when it doesn't make sense. Do you ever think that God might just use you to help others in some way? I wondered that for a long time. Like 40 years, I was out in the wilderness with stupid sheep, goading them in the booty, wringing them around the neck, whacking up the wolves, all that kind of stuff for 40 years. Going, what in the world are you doing, God? One of my favorite verses is Isaiah 41. Verses 9 and 10, it says this. It says, "You are my servant. I have chosen you, and I have not rejected you. So don't fear, for I'm with you. Do not be dismayed, for I am your God. I will strengthen you and help you. I will uphold you with my righteous right hand." I don't know about you, but man, that's a great verse to memorize, especially if you're hanging out with a bunch of sheep for 40 years. You got plenty of time to work on it. There's a lot of different lessons I learned in life, learned with God. I'd love to tell you more about it, but honestly, if you want to know more about all the lessons I learned, you can read the book of Exodus. Some of you have got it there in front of you. It's a great book. There's lots of good stuff in there. You got to check it out. But I know this. He has a plan to use you to make a difference in the world. If you'll just trust Him and follow what He says. I know it's hard at times. Believe me, I know it's hard. But it's worth it. Hang in there. Listen for God's voice. All right? And talk to Him about everything. Talk to Him about everything. And listen as well. Because He'll take care of you and He'll give you incredible fuel for your journey with Him. All right? So, with that being said, I think you guys can break up. You got little grouping things over there. Why don't you break up in your groups? And I think that guy in the back has some questions back there. I think they're in there. So they're probably under that iPad thing, whatever that is. So anyway, hey, glad to see you. Thanks for listening to me. it's been fun traveling several thousand years to come visit. So, toodles. Have a good time. We'll chat later.